Bring the June 10th, 2013 public meeting of the Fayette County Area Planning Commission to order. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Brenda, will you please take attendance?
Yes. Jerry Gilman.
Okay, here.
Zane Bedore. Mark Plum.
Present.
Ed Harrell.
Here.
Carl Hilton. Jason Waterman.
Here.
Gabe Dolly.
Here.
Brian Jennings.
Here.
James Barrett.
Here.
All in attendance except for Carl and Zane.
My apologies for dating party.
It's okay, it's just a picture.
All right. Next on our agenda, we have the approval of the minutes of the May 13, 2013 APC meeting.
I move to accept the minutes as presented. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes passed. Okay, on our agenda this time, first public hearing, we have subdivision, primary and secondary approval by petitioner Jerry Hathaway. Mr. Hathaway?
Okay, very briefly, this is kind of a formality, I think, but as you know, my wife and I own Tarkington Heights. Maybe you didn't know it, but you do now. And everything else in here has been approved except this red section here, and that's what you have in front of you, I believe, 9 lots that I need to get recorded as lots instead of just acreage. The city right now is paying me taxes on acreage, and then once it's approved and accepted, they'll be assessing me for lots instead of acreage. So that's about all there is to it. I think I've gone through 2 hurdles already. I've gone through the utility board, and we've gone through the soil water conservation board. And so if you have any questions, I'll gladly answer them.
Jerry, because I think people are liable to have some questions. Could you explain, as you did with the SWCD and then also when we were at Connersville Utilities, about the drainage system?
All right, very simple. We, I don't know how many years ago we bought this from, we bought part of it from a guy named Joe Long, and part of it we bought from Maynard Taylor. But I don't know if you remember. I'll try to stand here, and maybe you can see this better than anything else. When I bought it, Deer Trail wasn't finished here. You couldn't even get a vehicle down the bus. It was all gravel and everything like that. This road was done, and over to here, and partly down to here was done. So we did 2 things. I hired John Frank and his boys at that time to do a drainage workout, and we hired an engineer to do it at that time. And as you may or may not know, we get water from the cemetery up here that comes down the old traction line and works its way down through here. Well, John picked up the water about right here with an opening and a 15-inch tile. We went from there, we went from, we went from there all the way down through here was a swale, an open swale. At this point, we picked it up in a 15-inch tile. I went down here, across the road here, across the road here, and then all the way to Tressler's Pond up here. Then we also proceeded to come down here. They put a catch basin in here. We went back across here, down here, across here, and in here, and into an 8-inch tile that the city has running through here. So that is all been tiled. I have a 15-inch tile down in back of it, down through here, and then, let's say, we swale through here, I get water down through this area here from the cemetery, and it's all open drainage from here down to 12th Street and down 12th Street under the culvert and then again into Tressler Pond. So we drag this. This street here that we're working on now, or you're thinking about, is again has sodded swales, and it comes down to a catch basin here and here, and it runs over to here, swales down through here, and again to Tressler Pond. So everything is either underground or sodded waterways. So,
And Jerry, and you're familiar with everything that went on during the time of as far as the design and then also the
Yes.
retention pond?
Right.
And,
Yeah, we had them build a detention pond in order to handle the water coming out of the subdivision. That's the reason the pond was created.
yes.
And then there's a 12-inch tile, there's an outlet there, there's an orifice in that, there's a 4-inch orifice in that. It goes into a 12-inch tile, goes underneath the Chessie System railroad track and then drains north up to Lip Creek. That's where it eventually goes. The reason we put the orifice in is to slow the amount of water going underneath the railroad track, because that tile was put in back in the 1920s, and we don't have to want to push another tile underneath the railroad track. So we put that orifice in there to slow down the volume of water.
and it's correct that it was designed for the actual build-out for the entire subdivision,
Yes, it
correct?
was. Yes.
Where's that tile goes under the railroad tracks at? I know where the overflow is, that connects to the new tile.
Well, it's just basically almost straight north of where the pond's at. Yeah, it's almost straight north of that pond right there.
An opening there, and an opening in a railroad system.
No, it's underground, it's in the tile underground.
Well, that one's underground, but there is an opening under the railroad tracks.
Well, on farther down,
Yeah,
there's a big opening down there, but that has nothing to do with this one.
Okay. And everything functions properly in this? I mean, it can handle the water and...
That pond was actually
No, I'm
designed.
talking about his drains and his
Oh,
tiles.
I don't know all about his
Oh, okay,
drains.
you don't know about that.
No.
There's no problem, I'll guarantee you.
And it was reviewed, and then the SWCD approved the drainage plan, and then also the Rule 5 erosion control and sedimentation.
Okay.
And so that is signed actually on the Mylar that gets recorded.
To what extent is your driveway already in, that Woodland Springs?
It is up to here. It's got the first coat of asphalt up to here.
Okay, so it goes beyond, to the point where you want to get all the lots, okay.
So when I get things approved, I'll have the other one each put on, and then my wife and I are talking about building up in here, so.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
And that's what I made reference to at this meeting then with the fire chief, is to, the only thing that's really missing is, as far as any of the infrastructure, is the construction of a turnaround for the fire department's largest vehicle.
Okay. Do you have any of the lots potentially sold, or just waiting? Okay.
Is it just for tax purposes at this point?
It's so that I can, I guess you say, sell them and get ready to build myself, and then I want to go for tax abatement on them again. If I'm going to build it, I want to see if I can get tax abatement on my own property. That's some nice lots up there for sale. Only problem I'm running into, soon will be 79 years old, and the old man's getting ready to pull it in one of these days.
And if I can explain something to the plan commission members, because I think this is maybe the second or third subdivision request that we've had since I've been back to town. And in this particular case, is what Mr. Hathaway's asking for is both the primary and the secondary. And the primary approval typically is, that's when the actual lots, the layout, the drainage that you're looking at. And when you're requiring a secondary approval, that's typically so then, for example, say if Mr. Hathaway had not already installed the water, the sewer, the stormwater drainage, and then also the road, then it would be required to have some type of financial surety, whether it's a bond, letter of credit, to basically for the performance of making sure that the roads will be built. So for example, say if someone was doing this and say bankruptcy or something happened, Mr. Hathaway wasn't able to finish the job, then that's when the bond comes into play, is to finish the work.
Whether you know it or not, any street out there I put in, I've had to guarantee the street for 3 years after I finish it. This street here, when I finish it, I'll have to give a bond based upon probably Greg's best opinion of what it should be. I'll have to guarantee this street for 3 years before the city will take it over.
Does it have fire hydrants and all that
Yes,
out there?
it's wired, it's everything's according to code.
And with fire codes, that's a minimum, a maximum spacing of 400 feet between the fire hydrants for residential areas, so.
Okay.
Let me say one other thing, and then I'm gonna have it. As I just mentioned, I'm getting a little older. From here through here, I have about 5 acres of pretty much virgin woods. I'm in the process of finding an organization that wants to accept this as a nature forest with just walking trails and that type of thing. Probably not picnics area, but something just of an arboretum type setting. So I've got 5 acres here. I'm getting ready, I'm getting ready to give away. As soon as I find the right group, the right organization that I think will finish it and has the manpower to keep it up and so on. So that's not what we're talking about tonight. But so will this road ever be finished through here? I don't know.
Okay.
Well, that leaves a question, Mr. Baker, is now, say Mr. Hathaway then does donate the property over, would that require then going through the the vacation of the actual remaining plats of the subdivision?
You know, I'm not sure. I'd have to check the statute on it.
Yeah,
That's never happened before.
Yeah.
I'd have to look into it.
yeah.
We've never done that.
Anyway. Some also know what it is. I've been to it 4 other times. This is section 5, I think, so. 4 other.
Okay, anything else for Mr. Hathaway from the board? Okay, anything from the public? Okay. That will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept it as it's designed here. It sounds like it's all, everything's been done according, Bill, as you know, everything meets the qualifications to be done.
So for both the primary and the secondary
Yeah,
approvals?
I don't see why not, because it looks fine to me, so.
Second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. We'll do roll call.
Okay. Jerry Govic,
Yes.
Mark Flum,
Yes.
Ed Harrell,
Yes.
Jason Waterman,
Yes.
Gabe Nobby,
Yes.
Brian Jennings,
Yes.
and James Barrett.
Yes.
We have a unanimous vote.
Okay, unanimous.
Could I, talk just a minute? I spoke to the Soil Conservation Board a bit at the end of our meeting and the utility board. And I just want to say a little bit of maybe what Carol and I have done here. We've been here since '78. We haven't had this subdivision in about 15 years. But each house I built, for example, the last house I built, I spent in excess of $50,000 on labor, and I spent in excess of $50,000 on materials. Just to make it easy math, we'll use $50,000. Now, if the statisticians and the people that actuarials are right, that money is supposedly going to roll over 8, 9, 10 times. So each house that we have built, my wife and I, let's just assume it's 50,000. If it rolls over 8 times before it dies, that's $400,000 worth of business in Connersville. And the same on the materials, because I buy everything locally. So each house that we've built has generated someplace between $800,000 and $1 million revenue for Connersville. Now, I don't know that it rolls over 8, 9, 10 times, but that's what they tell me. If it does, That's what we've done, and I think we built 27 houses. So someplace in the vicinity of $25 million worth of business has been generated as a result of us buying subdivision and building the houses. We're pleased to do it. I have had houses I haven't made a penny on, but nevertheless, the benefit of the labor. So I use almost all, I rarely use anybody out of the county. I happen to be using a plumber now, because they squawked about my local plumber, so I went to Centerville to get a plumber. And I rarely buy anything other than Gilman's or Wells. So it is staying in-house, pretty much. So with that thought in mind, I appreciate you including this. I have no idea how many more houses we'll build. We've not built a couple more at least. I had somebody call me money bag the other day. That hurt my feelings a little bit, but I'm not even out of the red yet on the subdivision per se. I am on the houses, but I'm on the subdivision. So anyway, I appreciate your help, I appreciate Bill's work, and so on and so on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Randall.
If I need to sign anything, Bill, give me a call, I'll come do that.
Yeah, I'll need, come in the next couple of days. I have a couple of things with the signature for you. One will need to be notarized.
All right. Thank you all.
See you, Jerry.
Okay, next on our agenda is the zoning code amendments with a major revision of section 153.39 of the administration.
Okay, now, I know in particular as Commissioner Nabi had some concerns over it wasn't very clear that really is an advisory function to the Area Plan Commission. And I'm hoping that some of the things with the red text is the new text will help allay Mr. Nabi's concerns. And then I know the other issue was as far as the landscaping. Now, as far as with the landscaping is we are not actually requiring a particular landscape plan. And the idea with when the landscape plan is if it's required to be submitted as part of the package. And then it questions what the review is to make sure that it's not going to cause use of traffic is a big issue. And then ideally, we'd like to see a native drought tolerant type species that would go into the landscape site. And that's really what the idea with the landscaping would be. But if there's concerns or suggested changes on that or any other section, please bring it up. And I know that with Mr. Harrell, it wasn't clear on some of the issues of the membership. So I've attempted to do on the emphasize, for example, with the police representative, it's only one or the other. Same thing with the fire departments and the infrastructure, which is in the drainage, so that it's going to be one person who actually represents those, not everybody is going to be involved. And then I slid down the one from the Connersville Historic Preservation because really those are going to be very conditional as far as the vicinity of the airport, and then also the Connersville Historic District Commission. And one thing I did attempt to do was to some of the new language in the beginning on page 11, with at the bottom of page 11, is attempting to emphasize that because it's a limited scope really that the advisory board has. It's within the actual purpose of the advisory board and the plan review, and then the actual zoning code. So the technical advisory committee cannot go beyond those requirements. But one thing I did add is that, for example, say if it's a recommendation or it's endorsed with modifications, it will allow the applicant, the developer, the option to go before the entire area plan commission for which the plan commission can then at that point can either agree with the recommendation with the changes. They can change the actual one of those conditions with the changes, and then be the body with the final approval in those situations. And as I think I mentioned last time, that it's to aid the area plan commission, but also part of it is to potentially be more time on my part, but it will provide me on the project review additional sets of eyes for me. And with the constraints I really do have on time is the more eyes and the more assistance I can have going over our projects, particularly big projects, the better it'll be for me, the plan commissioner, and hopefully turn into better projects and something won't get missed.
I did have a question.
Yeah, sure.
What if the technical advisory board rejects the plan outright?
Okay.
Because that wasn't real clear to me.
Okay. What that has is, they're required to actually in the report is what are the reasons we reject. So for example, if it's rejected, then they can take the rejection to the area plan commission. And I guess that's something I probably need to clean the language up a little bit more.
And then is this mandatory for all commercial entities that meet the specifications? Or is this an optional thing?
Okay, this is actually anything that triggers any of those thresholds. For example, is the 1 acres or greater, which is and then the 5 acres or greater. Then if it's a smaller project, but it happens to be along one of the major arterials, and if there's going to be, for example, say if the property is already developed, but it's going to be expanded, then over a certain amount as far as the expenditure, then that actually triggers it.
So if this was a homeowner and they want to add an addition on, this
Does
would
not
trigger-
affect residential.
Okay. So it's just commercial or?
Exactly, commercial and industrial uses.
But it's not an optional thing?
No, not in those conditions, no. Now, the one thing that's in there when it might be a little confusing is there is an option for a pre-project meeting, which is what I've attempted to do in the past with various large projects that came through, such as with Walmart. And typically, the first meeting that you have, it's the preliminary meeting. You're reviewing the site, and then you try to get, of course, all the fire, the local utilities. And in the past, we've always invited is when it's along a state highway, we invite NDOT. Then we've also always invited the Duke, and then also the gas, and then also the phone companies.
So we already have something very similar in place then, correct?
It's an informal process. And so the idea is that it's to have something that's actually a formal process it's put in place something that's actually formal and required, it's going to be consistent from project to project. Because when you have something that's completely informal, not everybody is actually treated the same. It depends upon what someone's trying to do. So not every project is the same level of review, and you're limited to these voluntary meetings before, pre-project meetings.
But every project doesn't need the same amount, correct?
Correct. That's why there's it's based on under 1 acre to 1 to 5 acres, which is a medium-sized project, and then over 5 acres, which is really a pretty significant amount of development.
Mr. Becker, reading the language, I'm not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination. Is it clear enough from a legal standpoint to state this is an advisory role only and not a regulatory role for this technical advisory board?
That's my take on it. That's what I've gotten from reading it. Do you agree with that, Bill?
That's how I attempted to write the ordinance.
That was the impression I got when I read it today, that it was an advisory situation and plenty of room for movement in the joints as far as any follow-up by persons that don't like the results.
Could I just say it this way as a matter of record, since we're in this meeting?
Yes.
As a matter of record, the intention of this language is that the Technical Advisory Committee is advisory only,
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And
as a
then,
matter of record.
and then I guess the part with, which is, when we're talking about authority, really, we're talking about, it's granting the authorization to do so. And it takes the act of really the legislative act to create this advisory committee. And really when it's using authority, it's really meaning that the legal authority is being granted through the ordinance to fulfill this function.
As an advisory role. only.
Exactly correct. Now, if there's still some things you want to go through, or that you have some particular concerns with language, it's, now that you might be a little slower with school, I don't really know. You want to sit down and actually then go through some of these things.
I've read through it quite a bit. I don't know. I fear that this could be interpreted other ways by future folks, and that's what scares me about this a lot. Once it says authority, I'm fearful that they will take authority, and I don't think that's something that we want to give. That's just my take on it.
So you think we're like Washington?
I think there's always the potential.
Well, what if we put in here somewhere that this is an advisory role only, and maybe at the very start of it, and they do not have the right to go beyond an advisory role in some wording.
See, it says technical
Yeah, it
advisory.
says advisory, and it says
Well,
advice a lot.
but do you want to do that up front?
But then
the
also in
very
other
start.
places it states that they can grant or they can't, and they can reject, and then they can appeal, and it seems like we're creating another process for whatever person that wants to go through this process, another step for them to have to take, which is, I don't know, it's troubling to me.
Now, Mr. Flum, as we're going through something comparable project right now, a series of them, is, since you've sat in at some of these meetings, from your perspective, is would something like this have been beneficial, what we're attempting to do?
Yeah, it'd be a starting place to set some guideline, well, not guidelines, but just advisory, and this is the way we think you should proceed with it. I think it would have been. But
Could the pre-planning meeting do the same function? The optional pre-planning, because then the owner of the, whatever it is, or the commercial outlet, industrial, whatever, then they have the option to do that. Would that be beneficial as well? Because I kind of feel like we're doing something we're already doing. We're giving them more authority.
yeah, pre-planning, that would help you. I mean,
Bill, do you have, and I don't remember seeing it in here, do you have anything that sets out specifically what the Technical Advisory Committee review is to do, and who, what, if anything, is binding about it on the petitioner and the Area Plan Commission, and et cetera? And I think explaining that and spelling it out, like Mark Plum has indicated, might be able to clear it up a little bit.
Well, that might go up, it might be a place the legal authority would, up in the, closer toward the purpose.
Yeah.
But what it does state is it's the intention of balancing it's page 8. Yeah, it's the first paragraph is pretty standard, planning language. It's in every comprehensive plan, every zoning code, every subdivision ordinance. But what it states is site development plans are reviewed with the intention of balancing landowners' rights to use their land with the corresponding rights of abutting and neighboring landowners to live without undue nuisance disturbances affecting their ability to use their land. It's the convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site in relation to adjacent areas or roads, the adequacy of water supply, waste disposal methods, and protection from pollution of surface or groundwater, and the protection of natural, environmental, historic, and archaeological features. And those are what it's really looking at, but they're also within the, bound by the specific item, for example, parking within the zoning code.
Well, I think if you look at page 9, so paragraph 4, legal authority, that to me puts the parameters around pretty tightly. Do you see where I mean? Yeah. I make recommendations with regard to any application requiring a site plan review by the Technical Advisory Committee. It's an advisory body to the Fayette County Area Plan Commission in order to provide technical advice to the Area Plan Commission concerning projects of a size and or nature that may have the potential to have a negative effect on the convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement, et cetera, and on. But that seems to be pretty clear that, and I'm revisiting this now because I read it this morning, that is, seems to be a recommending body and a advisory body.
Yeah, that's why I got out of it. It's a recommending body and a advisory body.
Okay.
So without that recommendation, I see that you can go through the appeals process to the area planning, which creates another step. My thought is it should be advisory only, with no regulatory or any kind of restraints put back on it. That's just my thoughts. If everybody else doesn't agree, I'm one vote, so proceed how you wish.
What if the advisory board had a checklist? And basically, you go down this checklist and you advise whoever's wanting to do something. Would, you go down that checklist and make sure that they've followed it. They've got an answer for every question you got, because that's what the area planning is going to have, is going to be asking those questions. And if they don't have an answer, they need to get that before they come before the area planning. I don't know, is that...
Do we already have that?
Now, for this, there isn't anything that's actually, a specific checklist that's actually been developed. And,
Or if it were to say like, for technical advice only, that would give some, a little more meat to it, so it's just advice.
Okay, but I have a question though, is, say someone comes in and we're just going through, it's strictly that optional type meeting. But in the opinion and with the knowledge, say, of the members under the utilities and the drainage, or say the county surveyor on the committee, that something needs to be done as far as the actual, say, drainage. This is what we need for the drainage. And if the developer says, no, there's no way I'm going to do it, and how then should in this particular case, because if there isn't something with teeth that this is what we need, this is what we want, this is.
So then it has to go before the area planning commission, correct?
Yeah.
So the area planning commission could then say, we're not gonna do this unless you do this.
Okay.
I already feel like that's what we're doing already. We're trying to create another step
Okay.
that's unneeded. I mean, that's just my thoughts on it.
Okay, so it's that, so now then, you don't have an issue if something demonstrates that it meets everything, the advisory board saying, have at it. But it's when there's issues or potential problems, then it should kick back then with the plan commission, correct?
I don't think I follow what you're saying.
Okay, Now, say that there's overall a development, we like it, but we need you to make these particular changes. And so if they're recommending an actual change, in order to better comply with, the role of the advisory committee. So if there's recommended changes, should those then actually come forward to the area plan commission?
Well, from my understanding, what you said is we have an optional pre-planning meeting already. So they can go through their pre-planning meeting. Then if they met all the things that they found, or they didn't, they bring it to the area planning commission, which is us, which is made up of elected officials and appointed officials. And
Just recommended.
we would decide, correct?
That's all we got.
And that's where we're at right now, right?
Yeah, that's all.
If we were to create a technically advisory board, that adds another step before they get here. That's my understanding, correct?
Yeah.
Because
Which could slow down the process of doing whatever needs to be done.
because one thing that we don't have
But at the
right now.
but at the same time, it could speed it up
Yes.
if they were able to, when I look at this, okay, I look at that word technical advisory committee. And I kind of the privilege to sit on this commission, but when they start down some of these things, there's a lot of issues there that I don't have the knowledge.
I agree.
But if there's a technical advisory committee of these professionals, in my mind, they're able to look at these things and make recommendations from a professional standpoint.
So really what you'd be more comfortable with is, rather than granting the technical advisory committee the authorization authority, the ability to authorize, is for these particular types of projects, something like we did this evening, correct? All right.
Just a simple advice, hey, yeah, that's a good idea, or, hey, you got some problems with it, but they can go ahead and bring it here or not.
Okay.
There's no, yes, we agree with it, no, we don't. There's no regulations involved. They can't reject or deny. They're simply providing advice.
Yeah.
I think
Make sure he's got everything in
Yeah,
order.
I think if
It's
we do
gonna
that, that's
save
fine, but I
time.
think if we're saying, hey, they can reject it, or they can deny it, or then they have to force them to go through an appeals process, I don't think we should go down that road.
I always seen it as the planning commission having the final authority, the technical review committee can bring up whatever they want to, but the planning commission is the one that makes the decision on what they're gonna do.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. My question is though, is the technical advisory board gonna be able to hold them up in the process to get to here? From the idea from the technical advisory board to here, can they stall that process? And I don't want that to happen.
But you do agree that it could, in some instances, speed the
Speed it
process. But I also see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Even if sometimes maybe some personalities became involved, I know what you're saying.
How do you decide what numbers to put on that?
Well,
Son, yes.
It's made up of, yeah, it's all listed here.
Right here.
It's made up of people who would have the technical knowledge.
I wondered if you put something for one or two people from this board.
Yes, there is, what page is that on?
If you want to look at
Nine and 10.
what you feel we should do, I think that's fair.
Yeah, there's several.
I think it's a good thing, but I also.
And then also bring in the police, the fire, water, all the different cities, like the street department or NDOT or whatever, conservation.
They're just advising the planning.
so really, primarily, it's once we're starting to get down into
Things that go faster. To make sure everything's.
Section 8 and beyond with some of the process, that's where your concerns really arise, correct?
What page is that?
So beginning on page 11. Section 8.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially where it says petitioner may appeal an endorsement with modifications or rejections. They shouldn't have to make an appeal. If they want to bring it forward to the area plan commission, they should be able to grant.
I don't have a problem with that. We've had technical review committee on subdivisions since, 1970, and That's all the technical committee ever done. Then we went over the plans, make sure everything was up to snuff, and if there's something that wasn't, when we had the plan commission meeting, we brought it up, gave them a little report, and then the plan commission dealt with it.
I think that's great.
That's how it was resolved.
Okay. Okay, what I will do then with, starting with that 8, is I'll change that into something more closely resembles what's being done. Because one of the reasons, the idea of that was to have the authority, having a role where if it's meeting everything, they could say yes, is to, unfortunately, it's trying to make it a little more flexible in certain projects. If there's something that really doesn't need to go, I mean, it's so perfect as far as meeting the conditions of the zoning code, it wouldn't have to go before the area plan commission. So, maybe it's then trying to, the thing that gets in, perhaps part of the issue or the problem with this is that in the attempt to provide, unfortunately, flexibility, at times it brings a complexity, so maybe it should be a little less flexible and a little
more simple.
yeah, less flexibility and less, it's more simple, yeah. Okay.
Any other discussion by members of the board?
And I'll have something then for the board members then on July. So if that's the case, if there isn't anything else, I guess it's to vote the table until July, and then we'll make exchanges.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to table until July and a second. Roll call.
Okay, Jerry Gilbin,
Yes.
Mark Plum,
Yes.
Ed Harrell,
Yes.
Jason Waterman,
Yes.
Gabe Nobby,
Yes.
Brian Jennings.
Yes.
And James Barrett.
Yes.
Unanimous.
See you again next month. Okay, next up on our agenda is the director's report. Any questions for Bill on the director's report?
I move to accept as presented.
Second. Okay, we have a motion to accept and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
I just do want to make an observation, is that it's things are picking up, so there's a lot more inspections. As you can see, there's 79 over the last month, and I think there's 50-some back in April. So things are definitely picking up, and I'd also like to remind people that once again, that I will be out of the office the first week of July. And so plan commission members and anybody, builders or anybody else with projects. And what I have been doing, 2 people have come in the office for various projects. And then as I've gone on to some of the larger projects, such as Union Savings and Loan, and the hospital project, they know what my schedule is. When I do go out for the inspections, I do remind people that I will not be in the office at that time.
Bill, how's it working out since there's no one in the office at certain times? Is that working out okay, or?
Not really. It gets very difficult to try to do everything as well as I really need to for people. It's I think that, such as with this, where this is slipped with different points in time. Actually, in a way, I was kind of thankful that Mr. Hathaway didn't get this published in time in the newspaper, because it gave me a chance to slide some time onto something else. And for example, is when projects or the building inspections come up, is prior to how late I've been getting the packets to everybody, because in the past, I was always getting those out on Friday to everybody. So it gives an idea how things have slipped a little bit, and I apologize for that, but I really don't know what, I can do, because with those, because when those inspections are coming in, those inspection requests, especially, the weather this time of year for the concrete, get ready for concrete inspections. So it's difficult.
Okay. Nothing left on our agenda besides adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Good.
All right,
I think Jason remembers that one.
the June 10th meeting of the Fayette County Board of Zoning Appeals is now called to order. If you'd all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can you do a roll call for attendance, please?
Okay, Bill Crawford, Jason Waterman,
Here.
Carl Hilton, Carrie Steele. Here. Kenny Burgess.
Here.
All's here except for Carl and Bill Crawford.
We do have a quorum.
Yes.
Moving on, the approval of minutes from our meeting of April the 8th.
I move to accept the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes approved. And I'll get signature afterwards.
Okay.
Moving on to public hearings, we have one, Larry Gabbard of 1547 East, County Road 150 North, requesting variance from development standards for a parcel created prior to the 1993 adoption of the area zoning code, specifically relief from front yard setback, rear yard setback, and minimum lot size of 1 acre. So,
And if I can allow me a moment to explain the situation, is as far as the parcel itself. The parcel itself was created prior to 1993. So at the time when the zoning code was created, it turned the property that Mr. Gabbard now owns into a non-conforming parcel. And so that affected the front and the rear setbacks. Then, down on the other end of the road is when the county highway department purchased some land for the widening of replacing the bridge and then also widening the right-of-way. That then, there's another county action which then reduced it made it non-conforming based on the lot area. So there's two things that happened which were actually government actions that created the non-conforming parcel.
all right, very good. So, Mr. Gabbard or his representatives, come up, please sign in, or she'll chase you down the hall afterwards. And just tell us a little bit of the situation. And if any of us have any questions, we'll get those afterwards.
Main thing is, sold the property and, to Mr. Ramey, and, he's wanting, it was a single wide mobile home. And, he was wanting to not put a mobile home back in.
Okay.
Last year, 2012, the last renter we had in the property, when I had to evict them from the property, somebody broke back into it and set it on fire. So we had all that cleaned up, moved out, and I told the wife, I said, well, I'm just tired of messing with it. It ain't been nothing but a headache. Me and Mr. McDaniels talked, and I finally went down there and met him, talked to him face to face, and I was like, well, I want to sell it. And Mr. Ramey, he called me up, he's like, well, I want to buy it, but we want to see about putting a modular in, a double wide, which, is a, bigger home, it's a single family dwelling.
They're on a foundation.
Yeah, it'd be on a solid foundation.
Very good.
Bill, they couldn't put a trailer back there if they wanted to, even if it was,
Okay, the way it's written in the zoning code is you can put a mobile home on a property that has not previously had one, or it's the grandfathering is expired, but it has to be on a foundation, and it has to be a minimum of 1,080 square feet. Because when you're looking at federal laws such as HUD and then also Indiana laws of manufactured housing, it really doesn't differentiate between a mobile home and a double-wide steel frame manufactured home.
We've talked about that
Yeah.
a lot, and that's just like a loophole.
Yeah.
And I think the APC needs to work on that and try to find a way
Well-
to stop that.
Well,
make sure
the
that-
problem is that you get into is that this is federal regulations, HUD, through HUD. You cannot keep a manufactured home out of any zoning district that allows any other type of single-family dwelling. And under the federal regulations, that single-wide is a manufactured home. So that's a loophole that we can't do anything about because it's federal law.
Right, your
Well,
comment, Kim.
well, there are ways around those kind of things as far as roof pitches and,
Yeah.
and
You can
all
do, you can
that.
do things that go beyond the, just the foundation, but you could, like I said, things as far as roof pitch, and then possibly so many corners on the house, that type of thing.
Right, and there's a lot of communities that have done that, and that's their way of getting around that to make sure that never happens. Is there any way that we could request that the APC check into this before it becomes a problem someday in the middle of somebody's nice neighborhood, or even not a nice neighborhood? You don't want an old trailer with a concrete foundation underneath up just to get by the law, you know?
Well, one of the things that you have in a lot of the, most covenants, because of these federal laws, most covenants for about the last 20 years specifically have in them no manufactured housing. So that's something that you can say no to as a private agreement on the property owner who purchases. But it's, you have to be a lot more careful about things when you're actually adopting an ordinance that can be in violation of federal law.
But still, the APC could dig into that and find out what other communities are doing
Yeah.
to curtail that
Yeah.
from going on.
Please don't do that to me right now.
Well, that's something that we've talked about for many, many,
Just not me.
You got enough on your plate.
that's something we've talked about for many,
Yeah.
many years, though. Same thing as with modular homes going in the wrong way, just so they can fit on a lot, and it's not, that are not intended to be that way, which happens in my neighborhood, which we've all agreed, even back when Ray Lovins was here, that was wrong, but supposedly there was nothing you could do about it. Now we find out there are things you can do about it. And then we've got people right now that are planning to do the same thing up there and put another one in. But if we just sit back and just let it happen and let it happen, it's not a good thing. You know, I think if the APC does it, not you, but you get somebody on the APC to dig into it and find, like you can do some research and find out other communities, what they're doing to make sure that doesn't happen. Because everybody here would agree, you don't want to put a trailer in the middle on Iowa Avenue, just because legally they're allowed to do that on a concrete. If we need to find out ways to keep that from happening before it happens. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, getting back to the matter at hand here. Do you have any questions for Mr. Gabbard?
Is there still a lot of trash there on that property?
We've been cleaning it up, and Mr. Ramey's been going out and cleaning, and he's kept it mowed down and this and that.
And that's a property we've heard a lot about over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the,
When were these pictures taken?
about a week ago, within 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's fine, that was part of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
help show what has been cleaned up.
Oh, yeah, believe me, it looked worse.
I have looked at the same trash pile for 6 years,
That's,
and I am sick of it.
Amen.
That place somebody needs to go in there and really clean it up.
That's what we're planning on doing, Mr. Ramey said. That's my intention. Yeah, but we just wanna get all this done, taken care of, so, and, then we're gonna go from there.
Terry, you had something?
Yeah, was part of, and it doesn't matter one way or another, just so that just a question I have. You had mentioned that part of it was a rental property before.
Yeah.
Okay, so have the problems been is it,
Well, it goes before that, because there's even some of the problems when Mr. Gabbard was living there, we also had some.
okay. And so now, is it your intention to live in the home or to rent it out?
To live in it, yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Gabbard?
I guess one of my questions is that if, and this might be a better question for Bill, you know, if we say no and then the sale doesn't happen or whatever, and then it's just not a house, it's just a lot that's even less valuable, you know, what happens at that point? You understand what I'm asking? Like, does it get worse if we don't?
Would most likely get worse because be a vacant lot, just like we see other vacant lots in town and in other parts of the county. You look at some of the other rural subdivisions you've probably been through is, you see some of these lots that haven't been sold, or someone has moved out of the lot and it just goes overgrown. And everything that goes with that.
That's what we're trying to avoid. But I don't have time to mess with it. I work 7 days a week, and Mr. Ramey called me up and he's like, you know, I had a for sale sign up. I said, I just ain't got time to mess with it. And that's why a lot of it hasn't been done yet. I just, you know, I work 7 days a week and I just ain't got time. I've been keeping it mowed down and this and that, but when Mr. Ramey, we done the sale and everything on it, he's kept it mowed down and looked to me like he even started cleaning up some of the leftover stuff that was there, the trash.
We're gonna have trucks in there.
But I have renters dumping stuff everywhere and they was lying to me or they was hiding it and they was stealing stuff off of it and this morning I was just starting to mess with it. I'm done dealing with it.
Yeah, because one of the things that we would have with some of the people in the past on it was, would start getting cleaned up, then it would go back, and when it would go back, it was usually even worse than it was to begin with.
Does anybody in the audience care to get up and speak to this issue? Please sign in.
My name's Martin Messer, and I own all the ground south of the lot, adjacent to the lot. Now, my concern, a lot of it is not only it hasn't been cleaned up and maintained over the years, but the lot really isn't big enough for anything very big. They've been within a foot or two of my property line all these years. Now, originally, the lot was like a summer place. Maybe that was 45 or 50 years ago, but that's where it started out. With a trailer on it that wasn't much bigger than a camper trailer. And the guy and his wife come there and spend the summertime working their garden and stuff. And then people got away from that, and next thing you know, somebody made it permanent residence. But all of his watershed is going on my property immediately off his roof. If he was within a foot or two of being within regulations, but it's not that close. He's gonna be right on the road, he's gonna be right on my property line, within a foot or two of my property line. I think you should consider the depth of the lot and how much space the modular is going to take up, and see where he's at on the property line. Within a foot or two of property lines, in my opinion, not acceptable.
Well,
You know,
we
if
do
he
have
was-
that information from it. It's because the variance would be from 15 feet from the rear property line, and then it'd be 59 feet back from the road. So it's
That's what you're saying that you would have him do?
that's what's already been provided with.
That's not what's happened.
Well,
What been happening?
sir, this is what, okay, we approve the site plan before anything goes in.
Yeah.
We go out, we make sure it's complying, everything's set up the way it is in the site plan. So no, it's actually gonna be closer to the road than it is right now.
Here, if it helps any, to be able to see.
Excuse me.
Yeah, so
That's the place.
I have an extra drawing of it, but this way you can kind of see, it's 15 foot, this is the back here, and then 60 foot from the road.
How
With-
deep is the lot totally? I can't
Okay,
believe
the
it's a whole
the
lot
lot's about
deeper.
100 feet.
Yeah, so you've got
Yeah.
your 15, then about 27 foot wide building, and then 60,
Okay.
give or take. 50.
Okay, to give you an idea, Mr. Messer, is that, Mr. Cornet's property it's about what, 110, 115 feet deep? Okay, so it's about another 10 or 15 feet deeper than this particular parcel.
Yeah, I
So if you
understand.
can put in mind with how you picture Mr. Cornet's house, it's comparable to that, but it'll be a little less on that front setback and then the rear setback.
Well, yeah, Mr. Cornet's house is not that close to the property
Yeah,
line.
but what I'm saying is that his property is only about 10 or 15 feet deeper
Yeah.
than this property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so that's what I'm saying. So it's gonna be
Well,
it's gonna be away from that rear property line.
It really doesn't look like it's
Yeah.
anywhere near that size,
Yeah,
close to it.
Yeah, but when you go in and you get the information from the surveyor's information, the GIS information, you get the information on the parcels, you know, there's a difference of about 10 or 15 feet on the depth.
And you're
So-
either
Well,
right,
I know
yeah,
where the
it
property
wasn't.
line is, and if they say it's somewhere else, there's gonna be another issue. But,
Yeah.
I just don't feel like it's big enough to accommodate really anything. I mean, I know it's bad for Larry that he needs to move on with the property. But, I think we gotta consider all the others. Now, there's a creek there that he's within 20 or 30 foot of that gets pretty wild.
Okay, now, this is the other thing, is looking at both the current and then also the proposed floodplain maps. None of that property is within the floodplain for that creek. None of it's in a FEMA
Okay.
flood hazard area.
Well, I didn't know if it actually
Yeah.
was, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
even though it isn't,
Mhm.
he's still in a bad place. And if he puts it up there where they put the other trailer, and if I was to put up a fence on my property line, he wouldn't be able to get out his back door.
It's,
You know, I mean, I'm saying as safety issues go, them things should be
exactly,
considered.
and yes, that is being taken into consideration.
Okay.
Because that's when Mr. Ramey came in, one of the very first things I looked at were the floodplain maps because of that creek.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, because I cannot approve, and I will not approve anything for construction in a floodway,
Okay.
because that affects the agreements that we have in Fayette County for people to be eligible for the flood insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other special
Well, I
programs.
just wanted to
Yeah.
voice my opinion and make sure that everybody was aware of all the circumstances. If you haven't looked at property and don't know the history on it, you might not understand everything involved, you know.
And that was why, because it's, what I explained at first, because of the actions that the county government made that created a non-conforming parcel.
Yeah.
So when government does something that creates a situation that basically damages the effect of someone's property, that's one of the reasons things like the zoning,
Well,
the variances are in place.
I understand what you're saying on that, but what they affected was on the west end, which
I-
doesn't really affect things anywhere near what the
Mm-hmm.
north-south side does. The depth of the property is more of a problem than the width of the property.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the other part of it is that the location itself is also gonna be toward the part that's on the rise on that, you know, the east side of the property also.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's not gonna be down the lower area, because that's also where the septic field is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I just wanted to, you know, make sure all the issues was made aware. Thank you.
Appreciate
I
that.
have a quick question, just
Okay, go ahead.
briefly. And you're, I mean, by looking at this, you're right, where the trailer used to be, it was right on the property line. But in your opinion, after living out there, you know, do you think it would improve things to have a home that was more centered on the lot, a little closer to the road, and a single family that was gonna live there and own the house? Do you think that would improve things?
Yes, I think that'd be better than the situation was originally.
Okay.
No doubt that would be a better situation. I know you can't, and I guess you have ordinances, but if they keep the place up and keep it looking nice, that'll make a big difference.
Shoot, yeah.
And if it was centered more on the lot, it'll make a big difference.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank you for coming in and voicing that.
Definitely.
Anyone else in the audience want to come up and speak?
Bill, while he's signing in, how much farther north would the building be than the original building?
Okay,
I thought you'd know right away. or
No, not right off the top of my head.
how much farther?
But, yeah. Because what you have is, it's about 100 feet deep, Annie,
Say what?
and it's gonna be, okay, now the rear of it's gonna be pushed forward to the north about another 15 feet.
Okay. Okay, that's what I need.
It was, yeah, right on, so
If you wanna kind of visualize it, this is a
the garage
1 inch is
helped me.
70 feet,
Uh-huh.
so it should be a little more than a quarter of an inch off of the back line, to kind of give you an idea.
Okay.
I mean, that's just rough type of thing, but, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been there since 1979. And I've had a lot of problems whenever he moved in there. Mechanic work till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, hammering, motors are racing, and carrying on. I just live in hearing distance and everything of them up there, that place. And kept me from sleeping good. And then the motor oil, you smelt that all the time when I was out in the yard working. When the wind comes out of the west, which it does about all the time, blows right in on me. And it ain't, I can't even be comfortable out in my yard on account of it. And it's just, and my septic system runs right down there pretty close to the end of the line. And I don't know where his well is down there or anything, but I put in city water. I don't know where they got it down there or not.
Yeah, it does have city water. Yep.
Well, I know it didn't used to be down there, so, but I had it put in. But anyways, I'd just like for it to be quiet, kept up pace nice. I keep my ground right. It's clean, and you can see it anytime you look at it, and it's decent to be able to live on, really. I mow my grass twice a week. And have it trimmed once a week. So I just don't want somebody around there that throws their beer cans over on me, pop bottles and all this kind of stuff. When I gotta mow and everything, I gotta clean all that up before I can mow my ground.
Duly noted, and as was said before, this will probably result in a better condition than it has been in the
Yeah.
past, so.
Well, they've been at that pile of stuff down there in that yard down there yet. It's been there for over a year. And I know they put some old mattresses on that and then covered them over. And I think they're still down there.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we can put restrictions on these variances contingent upon
Yeah,
the
for
site
exa-
being cleaned up.
Yeah, for
to
example, with all
certain
these
levels.
various items, before I'll issue the improvement location permit, correct?
So, yeah, we can require that the lot be completely cleaned up before anything would.
Well, it needs to be a lot of it done there to clean it up.
But then on the other hand, we wouldn't have any control over it once he's done with the project. You know.
Yeah, it becomes his private property, the same as yours, and he would enjoy all the private property rights that anybody.
And the main thing is, if they once get in there, if they keep it that way.
That's what I'm getting at.
If they keep it that way.
Yeah, we would have no control over that.
Not after you get there, no. Oh, no. That's what bothers me.
I can imagine. I've heard about this property for years.
And I need to say something too on that part. A lot of the renters was younger. And Mr. Ramey, you know, I'm not saying nothing about age, but older. So I figured, you know, that would be the best.
I do manage a park, and I know what he's talking about, I do.
You're in a hot rodder, are you?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Heating and air mostly.
He used to mechanic down there at nighttime, I know.
Do you have any?
1 o'clock in the morning.
All right, do you have anything else you wish to bring forward?
That's about all I can say, is just,
All right, well,
I
thank
want
you
it
very
kept
much.
clean, if they do get in there, I want it kept decent and clean, for I do keep mine up. I even take my shotgun out and shoot the moles in the ground. That's the only way you get rid of things.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
I got three I can pick you.
Anyone else in the audience?
Well, I'll give my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I live right directly across the street from that big trash pile. I've been out there 13 years, and ever since he has bought the place, it's been a disaster, it's been a headache. I have mice, I have rats that come up on the porch. When the people get over there in that stuff and it's so close to that creek, they throw their trash out in the back. It starts to smell, it brings in critters. It's nothing but a headache. I personally, I do not want nothing on that property. That's all I gotta say.
All right, well, thank you for coming in to speak.
And there again, that was the issue with the renters.
Anyone else in the audience? All right, Mr. Gabbard, do you have anything else to add, given?
Only other thing I can say is that, I think, Mr. Ramey's gonna do a good job keeping the place up. And me, myself, I'd rather see a modular home there than another single wide. I mean, that's, really about all I have to say.
All right. Any other questions? If nothing, can we have a motion of some sort?
I make a motion that we approve the variance, with the condition that the property is completely cleaned up prior to having the permit issued as suggested.
Okay.
Do I need to be specific about the
Yeah,
items?
I would say that instructing the area plan commission director not to issue the any permits until it's the property's clean, all the various
All the debris
items.
piles and things like that.
Debris piles, everything else.
What he said.
Did you get all that?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Can I ask you a question?
He has a question.
His property line is right there on the creek line. A lot of stuff from the old home is over in that creek, and we tried to get in there and get a lot of it out. I want to clean as much as he wants me to, whether it's brush or whatever that's dead that's in there, so we get in there to clean it.
Well, I understand he wants to get in there to clean, but I had a bad issue with another guy that lived there. And I was nice to him, and all I got was headaches out of it. I allowed him to cut some trees down, and he dammed up the creek and everything else with him and wouldn't clean the mess up. So I'm not in agreement to be nice to anybody. He stay on his side, I'll stay on my side. There's a line, and if there's anything over here, over on my side, it's not his concern. Bushes, weeds, or anything else.
Is there, just for my own information, is there any trash from that property on your property?
There's trash over there. I haven't actually inspected. He said there was. I don't know
Do you
if
want
there's any
him,
trash.
I mean,
That's what
He said there was tars and stuff in there, and that could be an environmental thing, so I guess he could get the tars out.
so limit it to the trash, no other, if there's
Yeah,
trash?
no
No
landscaping or cutting trees or bushes or.
And the
We don't believe in cutting.
the brush piles,
No.
things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the trash that's on his property, and then the brush piles, anything that's on your property, you have to clean up as well as the trash that's on his,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
A long motion.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Jason Waterman,
Yes.
Carrie Steele,
Yes.
Kenny Burgess.
No.
All right, it did not pass.
Next month,
So it will carry over till next month.
carry over until next month.
Okay. Very good.
Okay.
You don't need a voting sheet, right?
Hmm?
It's a question for later.
All right, well, this will be on our docket for next month, and that will end our section on public hearings. Next item is director's report.
So is it just, I'm sorry, I'm confused. So we'll vote on it again next month, the very same thing, or not?
Yeah, because we don't have a majority of, we had a quorum,
But
but
not,
we
you
need a
need three
majority
out
of,
of 5. I'm
we need
with
at
you
least
now.
3 votes,
I'm with you.
one way or the other.
Yeah, it takes a majority to pass,
Pass or reject.
pass or reject.
Do it again next month.
There just wasn't quite enough of us here.
We
We
have
had
to
a
have-
quorum, but we have to have 3
Oh,
of the
to
same
have a
vote.
vote
We
on
have to
it.
have a majority of the entire body.
It didn't
Okay, can you
pass.
give me a date on that?
It's the
Second
second
Monday.
Monday,
Second Monday of July.
which is the 12th,
Second
I
Monday in
think.
July?
Is it on my phone?
It is July 8th at
July 8th.
7:30.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to director's report.
Move to approve.
All right, do you have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, very good.
One thing real fast, when we have people like this that complain about properties being trashy and stuff, and I know we don't have county ordinances over trash. What is there for people to do when people are up until, 2 o'clock in the morning
That's
hammering?
strictly noise ordinance. The county does not have an actual noise ordinance. So it's limited to Indiana code, which is disturbing the peace, which is between 11 PM and 7 AM.
So I guess what I'm saying is, what do we tell people? What do people do
Well,
if they have a nuisance like that?
an actual new, all I recommend to people when there's a problem with properties with noise is call and record each time, so you're establishing the pattern.
Call who?
Sheriff. If it's out in the county, you call the sheriff. And so you're establishing the pattern that it's a nuisance.
But you're talking about a civil nuisance though, as opposed to
Yeah, well, there's the civil nuisance, but,
a
yeah.
ordinance or statutory, but yeah, the county has no nuisance ordinance like
Right.
the city does.
Yeah, Bill worked on that for a long time.
The city has one that's pretty effective,
Right.
which we enforce all the time. But the county has none. I know they've talked about getting one in place, and it hasn't happened so far as I know.
But you can see how unfair it is for people that live next to
Well, they
to a
need to
problem.
talk to their
County
county
commissioner.
commissioner.
Right.
So those are the folks that have the ordinance-making authority in the county. Yeah.
It's a squeaky wheel with the,
And if they don't have people next to them working at 3 o'clock in the morning, then it doesn't squeak very much, does it?
yeah, because I get calls the same thing with people calling who live in the city about it.
Right.
And,
I've even
So
called
ba-
the church several times on that
yeah,
late night work
Yeah.
out there,
so,
hammering and knocking on that metal and everything.
But it's never got you anywhere, has
It
it?
didn't get nowhere. No.
because what I was told once when I was, back when Frank was sheriff, Frank Jackson was sheriff, is that because this county does not have a nuisance code, if it's after, if it's that between 11 and 7, it's the, go out, knock it off, otherwise it's you have to come back, then it's a disturbing the peace. That's what it moves into. rather than
Well, then
nuisance
the
code.
next step is try to get it prosecuted through the prosecutor's office, and believe me, they have a lot of very serious felonies they have to deal with.
Right, that's low on
So
the
you're gonna get into that problem too.
Bill knows I've been here
Nag your
a long
commissioner to
time
get a
after
nuisance ordinance in place.
That's true.
time about everything down there.
Jason's advice is to.
Yeah, I've gotten to know Wade pretty good.
Somebody that's not here.
It's in
Yeah.
Grows up weeds and grass.
Jason, you ready for a?
I'll take a motion to adjourn if you got one.
I'll second.
All right, meeting adjourned.